How long did Peter have to be in the cage with him? It's playtime. Bonesaw is ready.
Dude, did you know that they took out so the scene where he's fighting him, the part where he says, "Oh, I like your shirt. Did your husband make that for you?" They took that out the movie
No, I didn't.
because they deemed it as homophobic.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
What y'all talking about?
Spider-Man, with Peter. I mean, Peter Parker.
So are you gonna ban that? Are you gonna censor that on this episode?
That's the new one.
Huh?
Beep,
That's the new one.
beep.
No, Tobey Maguire.
No,
Spider-Man.
Tobey Maguire, the old one. When he goes to win the money because he wants to go to the
very
wrestling
beginning.
match at the very beginning, right before Uncle Ben.
Dang, I don't even remember.
Come
Oh,
on,
my
man!
God.
You don't remember
It's on
when
Netflix, bro.
Bonesaw
It's been so long.
played
ago.
by Macho Man Randy Savage.
Funny thing about it was, I didn't recognize him at first, but it was the voice. I was like, he sounds familiar.
Oh yeah. Oh, let me go get my water.
Oh, Jesus. While he does that, welcome to the Watch Me Develop podcast, where your boys, all 3/3 of the Watch Me Develop podcast is here.
Yep. One hole.
One whole.
Is my
One
head
hole.
cut off, man? Look like my head cut off.
Now look at these dudes over here trying to be professional. Look at
I'm just saying, is my head cut off, man?
you. Listen. 1 second you be slouching, next second you be sitting up straight. Find a happy medium. Look at you.
Oh yeah. All right, there we go. There we is. There we go. Oh, there you go. There we goes again. Anyhow, yeah. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, a dang good show.
Welcome.
Oh yeah.
to the
Nah, man.
show.
Welcome to the Watch Me Develop podcast. I am Don the Blaptist, 1/3 of the Watch Me Develop podcast. To my right, I have none other than John Butcher Jr.
What's happening, baby?
And then to my immediate left, I have none other than Ergo Dog Extraordinaire, Barber of the Bay, Stephen Joshua Bonds.
What's up, family? I got energy.
Yeah. We got energy today. We
Got
in
energy.
here, man. In there like swimwear. Hey, so thank you guys for showing up. We got another episode for you guys today, man. We just gonna be chopping it up. And prayerfully, y'all get some jewels from the convo and the conversation.
Gems.
You know what I'm saying? We just have a candid conversation about whatever. But one of the things that I've just been thinking about, man, it seems like a lot of stuff has been happening just in people's lives in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like what's being tested in a lot of people's lives is their will to fight. And it's funny that I kind of got this revelation from, I didn't get to see it, but I heard about it. This past weekend was
Oh
the
my
UFC fight,
goodness.
right?
I was watching
The
that thing live.
I believe it was with Edwards. It was Edwards.
Leon Edwards.
And Usman, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Nigerian trio
my
has been
understanding, right? 5 rounds. My understanding is like first round, Usman was down by points a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Second, third, and fourth round, Usman dominated, and he's basically about to win the 5th round.
it's a shoo-in for sure.
Right, it's a shoo-in, right? He's about to win the 5th round. All you got to do is make it to the end, like within the last, minute or two
Yeah.
of it. Edwards threw a punch and followed through with a kick.
There you go.
Yeah.
Followed through with a kick. So, and he wins the whole thing, right? Just wins the whole thing.
Yeah.
What's crazy about it is, can you imagine if he thought about all the odds that were stacked up against him and just stopped fighting?
Right.
Like just he didn't keep fighting. And I think that that's like just one of the things that is so important for us to develop in life in general, not only just in entrepreneurship, but in life in general, man. So many things will come at us and it'll try and squeeze and choke the fight out of us, but we just got to have that will that's stronger than steel to keep going.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The mental game.
It is crazy. If I could chime in, because y'all know I don't watch sports. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch football. I don't watch nothing other than UFC. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
I do watch that. And just to give a little bit more background for the non-UFC watchers out there, this man, Leon Edwards, has been taking like L's behind the scenes of fights. Like, he was on a 12-fight winning streak. The last time he lost was against Kamaru Usman 7 years ago, right? In 2015. So he's been winning ever since then. But around in 2020, he got pretty much sucker punched backstage, took a 3-piece in the soda from Jorge Masvidal on live television, right? And was never able to get that get. He hasn't got that get back in the ring yet, right? And there was plenty of fights that were set up, but he wasn't able to make it from the UK to America during 2020. He missed 2 opportunities to get to the title, even though he's been one of the top contenders in the division. And a lot of people, he was actually named the unluckiest fighter, period.
What?
Dang.
The unluckiest fighter across all of the platforms, UFC, Bellator, all of that. So he has been through the adversity behind the scenes and then went through adversity in the fight. And come to find out, there were a lot of fighters actually that were getting tired throughout fighting because they were in Utah and the elevation was higher than usual.
Right.
So his energy was zapped, right? He said his body just wasn't fighting or firing off right. And he was sitting on his stool and just looking at his face. You could tell he was kind of dejected. But he said in a post-fight interview that he was just thinking like, man, this is just my luck. This is just my luck that this would be happening to me on the biggest stage in the biggest fight of my life. But one of the untold, well, no, I'm not going to say untold stories, is his cornerman. The way that he hyped him up, the way that he juiced him up, the way that he was pretty much slapping him and throwing water in his face to wake him up to get out there and fight. I think that's something else to speak to, like the fight that we have for ourselves, but then also the people who are in our corners pushing us when we get down.
Come on, man.
So yeah, man, I was so happy for him, and I'm glad that you brought it up because the will to fight is something that we have to make sure we hold on to.
Straight up.
It was interesting that you guys are talking about that. You're saying your corner man and who's in your corner.
Yeah.
Is like, I don't think people, we talked about it a little bit last 2 episodes, is like making sure you got the right people around you. Make sure you have the right community around you. We got a chance to hear Dr. John speak this last weekend, and he was talking about like, okay, say you're so secluded and you're on an island. If you feel weak, if you feel low, if you feel depressed, you feel like you're in a dark place, who do you have to pick you up and encourage you? And like in the middle of our fights, you got to know that you're not alone, even though it might feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
But bruh, I caught. So I was working that night, and I saw the ESPN update come through, and my cousin is the same way. Like, of course he watches basketball stuff too.
Yeah.
But I texted him, like, what happened?
Yeah.
So I seen Usman gets upset. I'm like, what happened? And next thing I know, right on Instagram, bruh took an ankle to the earlobe and was out cold. What was crazy about that too, though, bro, is I was just watching like a TikTok about MMA fighters and how that particular like setup is kind of made. It's like the fake and then the kick because they don't expect the kick.
Yep.
Dude, at first you're thinking like, well, MMA is just a wild fight, but like they really have a strategy in order to win.
Dude, it's any man. It could be any man's fight. Because like, so for instance, I'm kind of far removed from UFC. I haven't watched UFC in years, like seriously. But one of my favorites, because I personally, I admire the heavyweights, right? I admire the heavyweights. And back when I was watching, there was a cat. This is back like Czech Congo days. I liked Pat Barry.
Okay.
Pat Barry was a small heavyweight. He was like 5'10", in like 230, 240. And so he was like, he's basically, technically that's undersized for the MMA because most of them dudes are like 6'2", 6'3",
Easy.
Right.
and they're like
Long
250.
arms.
Yeah, long arms and
Yeah.
everything. So Pat Barry is like, you know what I'm saying? Me in my prime, basically, size-wise. Right? I'm just putting that.
Yeah.
Me in my prime, right? So he's in there with Chet Congo. That dude lays paws on Chet Congo and knocks him out on his feet.
And Chet Congo
Listen.
was like
Chet
Francis
Congo's out
Ngannou
on his
back
feet,
then.
up against the cage, and the ref has not called it. Chet is out on his feet, and Pat's still drilling on him and keeps waking him up every time he's punching him. I have no clue what was about to happen, but out of nowhere, Chet Congo wakes up out of one of the punches and throws a wild swing and knocks Pat Barry out.
No.
And I was like, no! I was like, oh my God, what happened? What happened? Pat was winning.
Wow.
Man, and it just shows you like you just can never. If you're a fighter, you gotta fight.
Facts.
Right? You gotta fight no matter whether you taking licks or whether you giving them. You have to keep fighting. You have to stay in the fight.
Yeah, yeah. And some rounds you're gonna be down. You know what I mean? You might be down some rounds, but you can still come back. As long as the fight's not over, you can still come back to win. But bro, you know what's really tripping me out right now? How unified and how in sync the Holy Spirit is.
Yes.
I did not catch, and I was kind of down about it, you know, because I've been going to see Pastor John Harris back at Liberty every Wednesday. I was going up there when I didn't even have a home church. So I always like hearing what he has to say and getting his teachings because he's always coming with a word of conviction. But me and Nadia were in the back teaching the youth. And the word that we shared was, "You are not alone." Kid you not. And it was spurred on from Saturday night. Once again, Saturday morning when Brother Ben was talking about Patty Pimblett, you know, and the word that Patty Pimblett come with, just talking about, because one of Patty Pimblett's friends had actually committed suicide leading into, or I think the day of, Patty Pimblett's last fight in the UK. And in his post-fight interview, Patty Pimblett just said, like, man, that was my friend. I just wish he would have just said something to me. And it touched me that morning because as someone who lost a parent to suicide, like now being an adult and having friends, like it shows me the importance of actually being my brother's keeper and checking in to see how are you really doing? How are you actually doing? And we wanted to relay that message to the kids on Sunday morning, just to let them know, because the first thing that God said was not good was that man should not be alone.
Right.
Facts.
You know?
It's funny that you mentioned that because you were saying about how somebody needs to know that, you know, a lot of times we just need to know that somebody's in our corner, somebody's there to lift us up.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I had seen this post probably like several months ago, and it said that it usually takes about 6 to 8 people to carry us and lift us up when we're in our casket. But imagine if we had 6 to 8 people that could lift us up while we're living. And I'm like, bro, I was like, wow, that's some of the heaviest stuff I've ever heard, because you think about it, we don't really truly know what we've lost until it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we take each other for, almost all the time I could say we take each other for granted. We automatically assume that when we leave each other's presence that we'll
See
be
them
back in
again.
each other's presence again.
Yeah.
We do that with our families every day. And so it's just important for us, you know, because like today, my daughter, my youngest daughter, she had a rough day. I could just tell she had a rough day. She didn't really want to talk about it. I kind of forced her to talk to me about it as much as she would. You know, I didn't want to press too much or be forceful, but pretty much I was like, look, man, I said, I know you had a rough day. I'm sorry that you had a rough day. I said, but I'm not going to let you stay in your room and isolate. So you got 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes to be in your room, and then you got to come down and be with the rest of us.
Wow.
And so, and then before I left her, I said, hey, I was like, can you give me a hug? I need a hug. And she's like, I don't feel like giving a hug. I said, well, I know you don't need one, but I need one. Can you give me a hug, please?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just things like that I'm trying to respond differently, you know what I'm saying, so I can get a different outcome. I'm not trying to keep doing things the same way.
Wow.
And it was just completely like different for me because I'm not usually that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so it's just important for us, man, to really be present and in the moment, not just with the people that we live with, but just like in every situation, man, being able to see God in the midst of every situation, that I'm not standing in front of this individual just by accident. I'm standing here in front of this person in this moment for a purpose, on purpose.
Wow.
It takes a lot of emotional intelligence for you to do that and say that. It's like, it's not about, like you were saying, like, I know you don't feel like talking about it. I know you don't feel like hugging me, but I need it. So if you're committed to this relationship with me and to holding on to something, because I think that kind of becomes the end all when somebody gets to those thoughts of suicide. It's like, I'm hopeless. I have no hope left. I have nothing else to hold on to. I have nothing else to care about. Nobody cares about me.
Yeah.
So I might as well take it because I don't have any control. Take my life because I don't have any control. Just giving people those reminders is what helps people thrive to want to stay and be here.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't know if we talked about it before on the podcast, but I was listening to Ty Tribbett on Kevin on Stage's podcast, and he was talking about how in the moments where like he was going through everything he went through, like with his marriage and stuff like that, how for the first time in his life he had experienced thoughts of suicide, and how he was saying he said, as a pastor, I wouldn't say this to my membership or maybe people I was pastoring, but I felt this for myself, and I feel like it set me free. Is that the thoughts of suicide is one of the most prideful thoughts that we could possibly have as a person.
Wow.
And basically the way that Kev on Stage had responded was just like, well, what do you mean by that? And basically he was saying that, so you're telling me, and he said, this is me speaking to myself. This is Ty Tribbett saying, he's like, so you're telling me that because I don't have any more control over what's going on in my life, that I'm going to make the decision to take my own life, not realizing that my life was in God's hands in the beginning. So he's like, when I get to those moments where I come to my end, that's where I can truly ignite and engage my faith. It's like, wow, God, I don't have any control over this, or I don't have any control over this situation. God, I'm giving it to you because I trust you with my life.
Right.
Even if it's to a moment where you feel like I'm by myself, I'm alone, I have nothing else to go to. It's like, it talks about in the Bible a lot, especially in the Psalms, where David has to remind himself of God's goodness. And David has to remind himself of how much God has delivered him from.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing that, especially if you're a person that's dealt with suicide or a person that deals with suicide consistently, is like, hold on, before I allow my emotions and to allow my flesh to decide and to explain my situation, I'm going to allow the Holy Spirit to give me some perspective here. Because rather than sit here and think, oh, well, ho-hum, my business isn't working out, or I thought my life would be further than it is right now, or I thought I'd be more successful than I thought I'd be right now, rather than thinking about it in your timing and what you think would be best, is trusting God that, God, you know what's best for me, and I trust your timing, and I trust, what you have for me. And dude, there's no better place than to put your hope in Jesus. And that's with practical stuff too.
Yeah. Nah. It's how timely this is really hitting right now, because off of that, the men's breakfast, there's been 2 opportunities where I've been able to go and be an encouragement to somebody at a low time, which, it's always hard when you catch somebody who's just lost something or someone, because you don't necessarily know where they're at or how to address them, or, what mood or mental state they're in at the time. But just today, I went over and I visited my neighbor across the street, who actually, he's a senior in high school. He plays on the football team, and he was on the road driving back home from football practice last week. And as he was driving, a car came down the hill, jumped the center divide, and spun out to the point to where he said he had a second to stop. He hit the brakes and ran straight into the woman. She had a stroke on the road and lost control of the car and hit the driver's side of the car, right? His friend was in the passenger seat. He got out and walked away. The woman was okay, but his leg was broken. right?
Yep.
And he plays football senior year, right?
Dang.
So I'm sitting back and I'm talking to him and I'm just hearing, about the story, trying to see like where he's at mentally. And he said, honestly, man, this is like, I can acknowledge that this is the best case scenario, and that it could have been so much worse. Like that was a fatal collision and no one died. And the person whose leg got broke, like honestly, he said his leg broke because he hit the brakes and because his foot was on the brake when the impact came. That's what caused his leg to break because he was already extended like
Yep.
that. So then it broke. But had he not hit those brakes, who's to say that woman would have walked away alive?
Right.
Who's to say his friend or he would have walked away alive? So to go there and to hear from him and to be his encouragement in that moment and to hear where his mental state was at, I could tell that he was lighter. And I just also know like what to pray for also too. Went there, prayed with him. And it just was a reminder like, man, go check on people. Because you really never know. You never know. Go check on those people no matter how difficult the conversation may be or how uncomfortable it might be. If they're crying, if you cry, like, go check on that person.
The unfortunate part is from my experience just dealing with teenagers and young people is I've gotten those calls late at night about I'm thinking about taking my life or whatever. And the crazy part about it is just from having a conversation with the folks at the 1-800 hotline for suicide prevention.
Yeah.
Is I talked to a counselor one night and he was like, I know this might sound insensitive. He's like, but generally the people that are constantly talking about it aren't quite ready to do it. He's like,
Right.
it's the people that don't say anything that we have to worry about.
Right.
And the unfortunate part is, like you're saying, is those checks have to happen before the signs come. It's like if you're a parent, if you're a friend of somebody, if you have a sibling, just a matter of you talking about, hey, how are you doing, rather than not. I think that kind of comes to where like we have these conversations almost every episode. It's like, how are you doing? Not what are you doing? How is your soul right now?
Yeah.
Because I think like if we get so caught up, and I catch myself doing a lot too, is rather than explain how I'm feeling or how I'm physically doing, I'll start talking about
What I'm
doing or
what
what
you're
everybody
doing, yeah.
around me is
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And that's a telltale sign of like, no, you should be able to be honest about how you feel. And it might not come out exactly how you think, but it definitely helps you, it's preventative.
Yeah.
It's preventative.
Yeah, and it's like because it always ends up being a result of hopelessness and helplessness, right? That's usually what ends up being the cause. And so what's interesting is the story that you described as far as like your neighbor, with the accident and everything. It reminds me of the story that was in our what do you call it? Our daily office about the farmer. Remember the farmer who his horse ran away, and his neighbors came and said, "Man, that's really bad fortune." And he says, "Could be not." And then looks like I think like a week later, the horse comes back with like 7 other horses.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wow, this is really good fortune. You have several horses now." And he's like, "Could be not." And so his son is out there with him, and they're trying to get the horses together and everything. And one of the wild horses that had come back kicks his son in the leg and breaks his leg. And the neighbors are like, "Man, this is really bad fortune for you. Your son's leg is broken." He says, could be not. And then a matter of a few days later, the military comes through to the village to recruit all of the able-bodied young men because they're about to go to war. And his son was passed over because he had a broken leg.
Wow.
And here it is. He realizes that, basically that whatever happens, it happens by the providence of God, basically.
Wow.
Like whatever happens, who am I to make a decision as to whether this is good or not, or whether this is God's will or not. You know what I'm saying? I just need to surrender to the fact that he's in control of everything, and that my life is in his hands. And it goes, along with what you were talking about, the conversation with Ty Tribbett about, the problem with a lot of us is that we have what Dr. John calls that orphan heart, right? We have that heart where we don't want to surrender to the Father, or we don't completely trust. Because you think about an orphan has a lot of, is very apprehensive toward, help. They're so used to doing everything on their own and trying to get everything by their own merit and fending for themselves, right? And that when real and true help is offered, they don't know how quite to respond to it. And for a lot of us who struggle with that, like maybe we didn't have the greatest, earthly example of what a father is or what a mother is. And so we're a little apprehensive in our relationship toward God, right? We're a little apprehensive when God is saying, just trust me. Trust me, I know what it is that you want. I know what it is that you need, and I'm working everything out. And me as a father, I know I'm not always in a financial position to be able to do for my children what it is that they need and what they want, right? And that's I'm more frustrated with that than they are frustrated with it, right? And so what ends up happening is a lot of times they can get an attitude and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z so I can hustle to get the money and do it myself, right? When they don't realize that after we had the conversation about it and I told you that I'm not able to do it right now, the Father is already working out behind the scenes how to get what it is that you need and what you want. And by the time you get done hustling and jumping through this hoop and that hoop to get it done so you can get it for yourself because you want to bless yourself, right? Because you want to bless yourself. Wow. And you want to rob your Father of his opportunity to bless. And I literally thought about Malachi chapter 3. It was like, why were people... Will a man rob God, right? There's a lot of controversy about this right now in the church. Will a man rob God? And they're like, oh, that's Old Testament. You ain't got to live up. Let's stick with the fact that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's not. He has not changed. And there's people still robbing him, right? He's still the blesser. He's still the one who gives us everything that we need, exceedingly abundantly above all we could ask or think, okay? Wow. And so we rob him of his opportunity to be good to us, to be the good Father that he is to us when we go out and we try to get stuff and make stuff happen on our own, according to our own resources. We trust in our resources and not trusting in him as the source who's going to be the one that gives to us from his bountiful riches and his never-ending storehouse, right? And so it's the same thing. Like when I looked at it, because I had to ask myself, why does it infuriate me and make me so upset when my kids get impatient and they want to try and figure out another way when I told them I'm going to work it out? Yeah. And I realized, I said, you know what? We're no different. Yeah. When it comes to God, like we want what we want it now, and we think that if we don't get it now, that it's going to be the end of the world. And when we go and try and search high and low to figure out a way to get what it is that we want or what we need or what God has said wait on. Yes. We're basically robbing him of his opportunity to be who he is to us, who he desires to be to us.
And to bless your children abundantly. Like that's one of the things that like I've learned in fatherhood that I feel like me teaching my oldest daughter, God has come around and showed me like, hey, this is me and you, in the sense of like a father's love to his child. And like there's been moments when my kids can eat. I say it all the time, they can throw down. And like my daughter, now that she's gaining more independence and she's kind of like learning the lay of the land and where everything is, since we moved to the apartment, she's been getting up early in the morning. She'll turn on the TV by herself, turn on her shows. She knows where to get food from, everything. And like, especially around dinner time, we try to like limit the fluids. We don't want her peeing in the bed and everything. But what's funny was she got into this bad habit of trying to sneak into the kitchen and grab food and run to her room and eat food, which I don't have a problem. Anything in my kitchen in our house is free for her to have. But what she doesn't realize is, I think it was like a couple of days ago, I think either me or Erica was cooking dinner. And, sometimes it takes a little longer. So it's a little bit longer. She's like, I'm hungry, Dad. I'm hungry. My son, I'm hungry. So she tries to sneak in and grab some fruit out of the pantry. Yeah. And I caught her running back to her room and I said, Mariah, come back. I was like, go put that back. She's like, Dad, I'm just so hungry. She throws a tantrum. And then literally I've been saying this to her just as a practice. When she throws those tantrums and she's not willing to wait for what I'm trying to give to her, I ask her, I was like, do you trust me? And she's like, she has this puzzled look on her face. I'm like, do you trust that Daddy's going to feed you? She's like, yes. I'm like, all right, okay, then trust me. Give me an opportunity to show you that I'm going to fulfill what you need. Wow. And rather than you trying to get away with this little snack or whatever you're trying to have, I got a full meal prepared for you if you just wait. Wow. And so like that real life practical example in my own life has shown me the macro, like big level thing of what God has for us. It's like, let me show you this little illustration in your own life into how, you know, how you are with me. He's like, you try to go out and try to get it on your own, but he's like, if you just be patient for a little bit longer, I have something tenfold that I have for you down the line.
Yeah, no, for sure.
If your child asks you for a piece of bread, will you give him a stone?
Right.
Or if he asks for a fish, will you give him a snake?
Yep.
Or if he asks for an egg, will you give him a scorpion? Like, why is it so hard for us to get that and understand that those of us that are earthly fathers who would do no such thing to harm our children,
Yeah, for
how
sure.
much more does God want to give us the kingdom?